Friday here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We've got Jenna Harner on today. We're going to be talking about Arthur Smith and his performance on the year. While the Steelers offense did raise in their ranking by a good amount, the ultimate performance fell short at the end, and the identity of the offense kind of never materialized. We'll talk about whether or not Arthur Smith is to blame for most of that, or if that's more on what happened with the personnel. All here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download Prize Picks today. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play just $5. Prize Picks. Run your game. Jenna Harner's back with us. It's always great to have Jenna from Channel 11 on the show here. Jenna, one of the things that I think a lot of people are talking about with all the frustrations of the coaching changes, and while it's known that Mike Tomlin won't be moving on, there's questions about who will be moving on. And Mike Tomlin talked about people whose contracts are up. One of those people is not Arthur Smith. He just, of course, signed his deal just last season. And I think there's a general sense that it's like, hey, Arthur Smith just got to Pittsburgh. They went from being like the 28th ranked offense for like 40 straight years to being the 16th ranked offense. There's at least something there. But there's also people that wonder, like, why so many pitch calls? Why so much involvement at Cordell Patterson and Michael Pruitt and Ben Skoranek in an offense that had other playmakers? And I think that there's reasonable questions about Arthur Smith and things that he needs to improve on, but I don't know if they rise to the point of Arthur Smith was just straight up terrible and they need to move on from him now.
No, I think that it's fair to say that you can look and say, yes, there was growth within the Steelers offense this season compared to, at least now that I've been covering this team for 5 seasons now. This season to me was the most complete this offense has been, was the most productive this offense has been, which saying where they are right now clearly is not enough, but it's fair to say this offense took steps forward while also saying that there were questionable things that we saw Arthur Smith utilized, like you mentioned, the pitches, some of the usage of other players. I'm still wondering where the heck Mike Williams was this year. And that's something, I mean, I will hopefully get answers about as kind of things progress here. But you can say both of those things and both of those things can be true. I also don't think I don't want to say a lot of it. I don't think every bit of the blame can fall on Arthur Smith. A decent amount can for some of those problem areas, because again, he's the guy in charge. He's the guy making a lot of the decisions, but there was execution things that didn't work out well. That is the players on the field themselves doing it. You can call the plays all the way you want. The players have to execute them. There's a lot of, frustrations with George Pickens and what, some of the frustrations he had that I think a lot of the team shared. And I just think also too, some of the game scenarios, especially during the 5-game losing streak the team ended the season on, you're limited in what you could do. Whereas I think a lot of the early portions of the season, the Steelers, they were never down by a crazy amount in a game and had to resort to just throwing the ball and kind of getting out of the offense that they wanted to run. But there are a lot of question marks in terms of what this offense needs to look like next season in order to have success and in order to get over the hump that we've been talking about nonstop, where what's it going to take to win a playoff game for this team? Well, it's going to start with the way that they move the ball offensively and some of the play calling as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of the thing is that when people look at this Steelers offense, it was supposed to be an offense that could grind you. They could grind out the wins, that could find a way to win the tough yards. And how many times did we see this season where the Steelers were in third and short and fourth and short, and they weren't getting it still? Yeah. And there were times where it did work out for them and they were able to run the ball, but especially late in the season, it didn't manifest. And whereas they did have 127 yards per game on the ground, and that was solid. That wasn't it was just, I think it's just outside the top 10. When you switch that to efficiency, they were in the bottom third of the league in yards per attempt on the ground, and I think that's where Arthur Smith was supposed to get better results. You were supposed to, this is the guy that that helped get Derrick Henry his best statistical seasons up until this year, and you were hoping to see more of that from him. Now, again, to be fair to Arthur Smith, some of that might be the personnel. Some of it might be the offensive line. James Daniels was their best offensive lineman. He got hurt. Troy Fautanu was supposed to be an immediate impact type of first-round pick. He got hurt. And so you could say that against him. George Pickens, his situation, all the other things that happened. But, at the end of the day, this offense still was, was supposed to be better. I think there's reasonable critiques, like we're saying, like the usage of some of the players, the non-usage of some of the players, some of the play calls that we thought that the Steelers hung on to a little bit much. But I also think that this is something that just as a person who's followed the Steelers for many years, you got to give offensive coordinators and coaches in general time to adjust to things. Like if you go back to Todd Haley's first years with the Steelers, they were not good. The offense was still meh in a lot of points, even with Ben Roethlisberger. And it took really until I think his third year as an offensive coordinator before it was like, oh wait, no, this offense really does work. They just need to figure out what the configuration would be to get the best results.
Yeah, and it does feel like it is going to still be a work in progress. And I do think, like you mentioned, too, the loss of James Daniels and Troy Fautanu did play a big part in this, because what that offensive line, we expected it to look like coming into the season. There was a lot of hope. And I mean, Mike Tomlin mentioned this when we talked with him in his end of the season news conference. You can't hang your hat on some of the good things, but looking at Zach Frazier, the future is so bright with him as well. Yeah. Like that's one of the bright spots, I think, where I believe, according to the 33rd team, he was one of 5 offensive linemen wildcard weekend who allowed 0 quarterback pressures. Like you're a rookie and you're going against the Ravens. Like the Ravens line was very solid. So I think that there's a lot of, you look at those parts of things, obviously, again, the injury is playing a big role, but to me, one of the biggest things that I felt like didn't happen was the realization of, okay, this part of our offense isn't working. How do we get away from it? I mean, I know a lot of Steelers fans will say this too, but how many times did we see first down, Najee Harris run 2 yards?
Yeah.
And a lot of factors, again, went into that. But at some point, it felt like they needed to divert from that. They needed to go away from that. And we did see it in parts. There were times late in the season where we did see, okay, look, they're passing to Pat Freiermuth on first down, and that's such a small sample size. I understand that, but I think there's a lot more we could have seen from this offense, even given all of the injuries and the play calling. There's also the fact that this team never felt like they had a true wide receiver too. I think, we talked about it a lot all season. Pat Freiermuth's usage kind of fills that role, but in a really solid NFL offense, you want a guy like George Pickens, you want another threat as a pass catcher, you want Pat Freiermuth, and then you want guys like Calvin Austin. And to me, it felt like Mike Williams could have been that second guy. That's why they went out and traded for him. And then it was just like, Mike Tomlin said 3 weeks after they had Williams, or it was 3 weeks after the Commanders game maybe, and he's like, hey, we'll see. We're still waiting to see, Mike. Yeah. We're still sitting here waiting.
Yep, and like in his limited sample size, it seemed like Mike Williams made plays. I mean, heck, he got one target in the playoff game, and he made one of the biggest plays of the game for the offense. So I do agree, and I think that's part of where Arthur Smith has to generate more. I mean, look, it took Todd Haley some years before he realized, hey, get the ball to Antonio Brown. He's going to be, he's going to be the problem. He's going to be the problem that defenses don't want to face. And not to say that Mike Williams is that, but I think it just takes time to figure out how to engineer an offense to feature a certain guy when other teams are trying to counter you from doing that.
Yeah, and it is going to be really interesting. I mean, I know there's so many questions at where this team goes next season, especially at the quarterback position, but it feels like if you want to be this team that's physical, that can be in the trenches, that can run the football, you have to put all your resources into utilizing that in the best way. I also feel like, too, correct me if I'm wrong, we didn't get a whole lot of Jaylen Warren in the Ravens game either.
They didn't get a whole lot of him. I think they kind of abandoned the run in general, especially.
That's part of it as well. You're right. No, but I think you want to. His strengths are so apparent and so we've come to know the type of playmaker that he is. I feel like getting him involved a lot more next season, just also based on what's going to happen in that running back room. It feels like there's lots of little things that we can sit here and say, okay, these feel like they have to be the tweaks. And obviously Arthur Smith, I'm sure, is working with Mike Tomlin, working with Art Rooney, working with all that whole front office to figure out the best way to utilize everything. But it feels like there seemingly were easy fixes that just never happened, or not easy fixes, but fixes that could have made at least a little bit more of an impact.
Absolutely. I want to talk more about this offense, and if Arthur Smith staying, I don't think he's going to be fired. We're pretty clear that's not going to happen. There are teams interviewing for head coaching positions, but the reason Arthur Smith was brought in was to help the Steelers embrace this identity of being a physical offense. But is that the route the Steelers need to be going with the way the NFL is going? We'll talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Jenna Harner, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, to remind you, the show is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's playoff time. If you're like me, you want to make the most out of the final weeks of football action. That's where Prize Picks comes in. If you love football and want a chance to win real money while watching the games, Prize Picks is the place for you. It's the best place to turn your sports opinions into cash with daily fantasy player projections. With Prize Picks, you simply pick more or less on player stats like total passing yards or rushing touchdowns for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. You can make your picks in less than 60 seconds, whether you're looking for a flex play to boost your payout or you want to cash out quickly. Prize Picks has got you covered. And with over 10 million members and billions in winnings, it's clear that people are loving this platform. And when your picks hit, Prize Pick makes it easy to catch out. You can get your money as fast as 15 minutes. Here's a special offer for Locked On NFL listeners. Download the app today. Use code Locked On NFL. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's Prize Picks. Run your game. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code Locked On NFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly for playing just $5. Prize Picks. Run your game. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Jenna Harner of Channel 11 WXI. Jenna, there's been the push and the talk that the Steelers plan for how they want to build this team is the wrong way, that they're embracing too old of a philosophy. They can't go this way any longer. They need to go into the modern NFL and just look to make a more complex passing offense. But as you and I were talking about off camera, there's a lot of teams still playing right now that don't exactly play that way, and they're playing pretty well without that way.
Yeah, no, they are. This was a stat I was reading this morning from Chris Trapasso from CBS Sports. He's a draft and player analyst for them. And he posed a question. He said, what do the 8 divisional teams have in common? Great quarterback play, sure. So it's fair to acknowledge that they all have really solid quarterback play. But how about stellar run games? Because these stats are so, like, I say stupid in a funny way, but they're stupid, but they also indicate exactly what is bringing a lot of these teams success. So in terms of EPA per rush in the regular season, the Bills, number 1, the Eagles, number 2, the Ravens were 3rd, the Commanders were 5th, the Lions were 6th, the Chiefs were 11th, and the Rams were 12th.
There you go, right there.
And Texans were 19th. Texans feel like a teeny bit of an outlier here, but I also think it's fair to acknowledge that if you look on paper, they feel like the
least of the.
Yeah. And just based on their regular season resume and all that. But then in success rate, in terms of running the football this season, Bills 2nd in the league, regular season. Ravens 3rd, Lions 4th, Chiefs 5th, Commanders 6th, the Rams 7th. And then rushing touchdowns, we have 1, 2, 3, 5 of the top 6 teams in the league at it this season. So the numbers don't lie. These teams, yes, while they are quarterbacked by Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson and CJ Stroud and Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford, they have good quarterback play, but they also can run the football really well and did so really well this season and did so consistently this season. And I think that, again, the Steelers have made that completely apparent. They want to make that part of their identity. So now go do it. So now go make that part of your identity, because the Steelers were, I believe, one of the teams in the league that had the most attempts in terms of rushing the football this season, but their efficiency, those numbers were not great at all. So they did it a lot, but it wasn't successful for them.
No, agreed. They it wasn't successful for them. It was funny. Arthur Smith, when we asked him probably like in the second half of the season about the run game, and he talked about it being an old truck that it took a minute to get it started up, but once you got it started, it was dependable. And look, there were games where the run game was dependable. Najee Harris had 3 straight 100-yard rushing games. There were some really good showings there, but by and large, it deflated over time. And you look at the Steelers rushing attack. Yeah, they ran the ball the 4th most times in the NFL. They got the 11th most yards, but that's 25th in yards per attempt. That's not where you want to live if you're the Steelers, because that means that you're not getting you're most likely not getting 4 yards on most of your carries. And they averaged 4.1 at the end of the year, but you want to be averaging closer to 5. If you want to be a really good rushing offense, especially when you are a team that is lacking at quarterback. And I think that's the other thing that the Steelers are doing here. Like, if the Steelers had an MVP level quarterback, they'd be doing something different here. If they had Joe Burrow, I'm sure they'd be like, yep, go get all the receivers. Go, just make this a passing attack. Go get the most complex passing coordinator that you can find. But they're doing what, you look at the teams that you mentioned there, and even some teams that you did like that don't qualify as like the Bills have Josh Allen. They don't necessarily need a great run game, but it's nice to have one. Lamar Jackson, he is a big part of that run game. But you look at like teams like the Eagles, teams like the Lions. The Eagles, Jalen Hurts is good, but he's not in that elite tier of quarterback play.
No.
I think the same thing applies to Jared Goff with the Lions. He's good, but he doesn't apply to that elite tier. And it's that balanced offense with really good offensive line play, really strong running back play that kind of allows everything to kind of balance a little bit, takes the pressure off the quarterbacks, and then you're asking them to make them win in more favorable spots. And that's where the Steelers, I think, ultimately need to be, because they're not getting the super quarterback of the future anytime soon. I don't think it's in this draft. I don't think there's going to be a free agent that's like that. I think that they should consider Fields, Wilson, and or both. One or the other. But I think whoever that you get, there needs to be a better offensive line and a better run game behind them so that it can kind of take the pressure off of them having to be the playmakers, the way that Russell Wilson basically had to be in the second half for the Steelers against the Ravens. And they need that run game to be alive. I think that their pursuit of that is still very important for the future of this franchise.
Absolutely. And I mean, again, there's a reason they have put in the Omar Khan, Andy Weidel era of this front office. There is a reason they have put so much emphasis on drafting guys in the first round. There's a reason they got Broderick Jones. There's a reason they got, drafted Zach Frazier and Mason McCormick. Like, this is a team that wants to build that philosophy. And that was also, again, part of the reason why they brought Andy Weidel into Pittsburgh, because of his success in doing that with Philadelphia. It's also fair to acknowledge that it takes time, and it's fair to acknowledge that it took Philly a little bit of time in that way to build what they have now in that offensive and defensive front. And I think this is going to be something we see the Steelers look to continue to pour resources into and look to continue to utilize those draft picks on, because this is going to be those building blocks to how you want to build this team and the success that you want to bring it. Now, again, I think also it's fair to acknowledge, like you were mentioning, that having elite quarterbacks that are also very mobile, in the Josh Allens, in the Lamar Jacksons, in the not necessarily mobility of Patrick Mahomes, but in just the way he can keep plays alive and he can move with his legs. Again, not in the way that we see Lamar or Josh Allen. Right. Like, for Lamar and Josh Allen, those guys are very integral parts of what's brought them success there. If you do say at quarterback next season, hey, we are going to go with Justin Fields. Russ, we're going to, let you continue on. Thank you for everything that you did this past season. But if they're going to utilize that with Fields, they should also make that part of their offense too, and highlight around him, hey, look, we're going to use his mobility, his quickness, his speed, his quarterback read option scenarios there, but you're going to utilize that and run the football well. So it kind of feels like it goes hand in hand. And again, they're not going to get this massive quarterback, but you can utilize what you have and what you can work with well to fit the identity you want this team to have.
I agree. I think that's where the Steelers, need to go. I think that's where they plan to go, but it takes time to get there. Again, when we went back to, the Eagles game, I think we both predicted that game for the Eagles to win on this show. And I was just like, look, the Steelers are trying to get to where the Eagles are offensively. They're trying to get an offensive line that's stalwart, that's winning the line of scrimmage consistently. They don't have that now. Maybe they'll get that in a couple years, maybe next year, but That's something that it takes time to build. It took time for the 2010s unit to build. Marquise Pouncey and David DeCastro did not happen overnight. It took time for them to build their chemistry and to build that offensive line. And that's what I think this offensive line and this team is going through right now. They're finding those pieces, and they're going through those days where that are building up to those moments. We'll see where that future takes this offensive line. But we got to take a break. When we come back, it's time to look at the divisional round games. We'll do that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Jenna Harner. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, remind you, this show is brought to you by TurboTax. Are you tired of endless waiting, wondering, and worrying about your taxes? Well, now that's a thing of the past. Taxes don't need to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with TurboTax expert who can get you to kick to work on your return right away. No more waiting for answers. No more wondering if you're missing out on deductions. No taxes into the sunset. Whether we've got one form or 20, TurboTax experts give your taxes their undivided attention while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on what really matters. You won't have to lift a finger, but you'll get the peace of mind knowing that your taxes are being handled by the pros. Ready for stress-free taxes and money-back guaranteed? Head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert who's ready to take your taxes off your plate so you can focus on your day. Only available with TurboTax Live, full service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantees. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our show here today, and we like to keep it fun on the show here. We did some Steelers talk, and now we're going to get back to our picks. Now, I want to make it clear, Jenna Harner did beat me in the regular season. Yeah, she won by 3 games. I hate myself. Is this the first year you beat me, or have you beaten me before? I always forget.
I was going to say, I feel like it might have happened last year. I know it's happened once. I don't want to. Well, we can go back in the archives and figure this one out.
We can definitely do that because I'm sure there's an episode somewhere where I'm like yelling at the sky. But right now, Jenna, did you get a chance to join our pigskin bracket challenge for the playoffs?
I didn't, but I did let Mike DeFabo know my picks last week. I don't know if they made the show or not, but I do. Okay, I have them. If you'll allow, I had them texted to Mike. I have them time-stamped as well, so I can give you my picks as well. So we can do some math.
We'd like to do some math. Now, right now, if you've joined if you were able to make the bracket challenge, over just about 69 of you all did, nice. Then I'm tied for first place with like 10 people, so in y'all's faces. But Jenna, real quick, what were your picks last week? And we'll do Scout's honor here.
I'm pulling them up. Give me one quick second. Although when I search your name naturally in my phone, it goes to your text. This would have been last week. We can give me one moment.
No, we'll give you some time to figure it out. But
I got them.
Okay, what were your picks last week?
Chargers. Got that one wrong.
Yep.
Ravens.
Okay.
Bills, Eagles, Commanders, and Vikings. So I think I got 2 wrong.
Okay, cool. Well, then I got 1 wrong, so I got 1 back on you. So I'm only down 2 from you from this entire year. So let's go. We're still competing here. Because I guessed the Chargers as well, but I guess the Rams were gonna win their game. That was where I thought that they could take the Vikings. That's why I'm tied for first place in the bracket league. But let's go. So let me put it this way to you. I don't know if you did a bracket like anywhere else in it. If you did a bracket right now, who would be your Super Bowl picks?
Ravens, Lions.
Okay, we're on the same page here. That's
okay.
Yeah. So I revealed my bracket when we first did it. I did the Chiefs playing the Chargers. They beat the Chargers. The Ravens would beat the Bills. Then the Ravens would beat the Chiefs. I had the Lions playing the Commanders. The Eagles playing the Rams. I had the Eagles beating the Rams. The Lions beating the Commanders. Then the Lions beating the Eagles. And then there. So but we get to adjust these every week. So that's the thing, is that now we're at this stage, and we're going to go over all the odds, ends, and lines that are given to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. Let's start with the first game of the weekend, and that's Texans at Chiefs. Now, the Texans surprised me, Jenna. I thought, especially the way that game started, CJ Stroud looked out of sorts. Then all of a sudden, he rolls out, hits a crazy pass, and then the Texans just took off, and the Chargers just crumbled. It was insane to watch. But the Texans this week, they pulled off a big upset. They are now 8.5-point underdogs on the road in Kansas City. Andy Reid in Kansas City coming off a bye, or at home coming off a bye, whether it's Kansas City or Philadelphia. I believe he is 7-1 in his career. His only loss ever was to Mike Tomlin and the Steelers back in 2016, 2017. This is a week where I think the Texans proved a lot of people wrong already, and I think they have every right to be proud of that. But I think these Chiefs are ready to be like, all right, that yet a fun story. We're heading to the AFC Championship.
This is when the season starts for the Chiefs, right? This is when they're like, you question them all season long. Oh, are the Chiefs that good? Oh, is this a down? No, this is when the Chiefs put their foot on the gas and say, yeah, we're exactly who you thought we were. We're better than this team that we came in at. So I think the Texans defense will play very solidly and give Kansas City a little bit of trouble in this one, but I think this one's KC, no doubt.
Yeah, I think the thing is the Chiefs defense plays very solidly, and they're going to give the Texans even more problems. So I agree with you there. Chiefs get the dub. Let's move on to the other Saturday game. Actually, I just realized I think there's two Saturday, 2 Sunday. I was going to say this thing just read weirdly. But the Commanders play the Lions, the first NFC game. The Lions are 9.5-point favorites at home over the Commanders. Jaden Daniels is exciting. The way that he won the game for them last week, I thought that he would win the game for them. But Jaden Daniels, he got it done then. But this is now the Lions team that I've been saying all year. I think they've got the tools. They've got that offensive line. They've got that run game. I think where the Commanders were able to outpoint the Buccaneers and figure some things out, I think that's where the Lions are going to be like, okay, cool, you got a passing game, so do we, but we also have this run game, and your defense is going to have to account for both of it all game long.
Yeah, the Lions kind of feel like this team of destiny that like it is theirs for the taking. I think also them having the bye week, if anybody needed a bye week more, it was the Lions to heal up, to get healthy. David Montgomery's coming back. You thought you'd lost him for this season. I just think they have too many weapons kind of in every level of both their offense and defense. They're such a fun team to watch. They can roll consistently. I think this is going to be my favorite I shouldn't say favorite quarterback matchup, my second favorite quarterback matchup of the weekend. But I think Jaden Daniels is going to make some big plays too. But I think the Lions are just going to be too much of a powerhouse, and I think they're going to roll to the NFC Championship.
Agree here. Rams at Eagles. I said the Rams were my dark horse going in as the season was getting closer and closer, because I was like, man, Matt Stafford's figuring it out. They've got some good young pieces. They're putting it together, and the NFC West just isn't a good division this year. They got a chance to win the division, match up with a wild card team and get a win. That's exactly what they did. But now they face an Eagles team that's a 6.5-point favorites at home. I thought the Eagles had a chance of losing if Jalen Hurts' concussion kept him out of the first week. It didn't. They destroyed the Packers, and now they're playing the Rams. I'm picking the Eagles to win here, Jenna. But give me the Rams to cover. If I was betting on the spread, I think this is going to be a very tight game. These are two good teams. I think the Rams have a lot of similarities to the Steelers, except I think their quarterback situation is just better, and they can manage things, and that's where Matt Stafford's going to make up some differences. But Eagles are still that kind of physical team. I think they find a way to grind this game out. It's going to be close down to the wire, but Philly gets a win. What say you?
As soon as we had a saxophone national anthem in Philly last week, I was like, see you later, Packers. It's over. Like, good luck. Pack your bags now. It's yike. The Eagles, again, to me, feel like one of the most complete teams. I think, to me, the three most complete teams left are the Eagles, the Lions, and the Ravens, in no particular order there. I think that they just have too many playmakers. Again, they're running the football insanely well. Saquon is continuing to be Saquon. I think the Rams defense is going to pose more challenges than the Eagles have seen in a little while here. I do agree with you that they cover the spread, but I think that Philly is going to be punching their ticket to the NFC Championship and have a date with the Lions, and I quite frankly cannot wait for that potential matchup.
That could be a huge matchup. Lots of physicality. I could see that being a big showdown. But the big showdown this week is the one everyone's waiting for. It's definitely the game of the week, though, which is now your favorite quarterback battle. Yes. It might be the MVP battle. The Ravens at the Bills. The Ravens are 1.5-point favorites on the road. Now, I want to point this out. They were 1.5-point dogs on the road at the start of the week. Something flipped for them, and FanDuel flipped the odds back around. But Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, both have been on a crazy tear right now, and both of them have cases for MVPs. And let's have this discussion, Jenna, before we get to the picks of this. If you were to pick an MVP, and if it's not one of these guys, you could do that as well. Who would you pick at this point?
My MVP is Lamar Jackson. And I know so many people, I think the most interesting part of this whole discussion is we've been digging into like what MVP actually means.
Right.
And I think I see a lot of the Buffalo people that are very for Josh Allen winning MVP being like, well, like it's the most valuable player to their team. And if you took the player off the team, like we're thinking too hard here. Who has played the best this season, who has been the most consistent, whose numbers have been the best, who has been such a crucial asset to their team, of course, but their team's success, to me, it's Lamar. Like, I get this whole thing that the Bills came in and, they didn't have a true receiver number one. They moved on from Stephon Diggs. People were doubting this team. This isn't the, like, you proved us wrong when we doubted you, even though who was really doubting you award. This is MVP, the most valuable player in the league. And to me, Lamar Jackson's numbers, especially, they're better than his MVP season previously. He has been, this offense has been number one. Like there's so many things that just point to it for me in that way. So to me, it's Lamar. I think, again, Allen has a very, very solid case, and I think he is my second guy. But Lamar, to me, is your MVP this year.
13 more passing touchdowns for Lamar and 2 less interceptions. A 41-4 touchdown to interception ratio. That is insane. He has the highest passer rating of anyone in the NFL, highest touchdown percentage in his passes. And then, he also runs the ball a lot. And Josh Allen is, again, great player in all that. But this year, it's been Lamar Jackson. Now, with that being said, we both admitted we picked the Ravens to go to the Super Bowl. Are we holding to that here with the Ravens beating the Bills going into Buffalo?
I think so. And I think it was really interesting because a lot of people this week, especially in Buffalo, were asking me, hey, with how the Ravens performed last week, was that an indicator of them, or was it an indication of just the Steelers not performing well and not looking great and not being able to make a lot of plays? To me, I'm like, no, when you watched Lamar Jackson last week, was it the second touchdown where he's dancing and he's dancing?
It was the third. It was the one right before halftime.
Yes, they scored 3 first half touchdowns. Here I am being like, the late half. No, 3 first half touchdowns. That to me is an indication of what this team is capable of. When you have him creating magic, I think that offensive line held. It was a good solid 5 or 6 seconds. It was insanely incredible watching him do that. This team is just firing on all cylinders. Derrick Henry is a madman who has been shot out of a cannon. Yep. Mark Andrews has come alive in the second half of the season. They were able to get it done with Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman without Zay Flowers. That was massive. If Zay Flowers doesn't play this week too, I think that they still are going to make a big impact in the way that they play. But that defense to me has figured things out as well. That was a big knock on the Ravens earlier this season was, they haven't figured it out defensively. When they moved Kyle Hamilton into the middle, that changed so much for this team. This is an angry team. This is a team that's playing their best football. And I think I've been saying all week as well, the winner of this game is going to be the quarterback that the opposing team cannot limit. And I think that is going to be the case here. I think, to me, the Ravens defense is going to be able to limit Josh Allen more than the Bills defense is going to be able to limit Lamar Jackson. That's what it's going to come down to. And so I think the Ravens win. This game's going to be a lot closer than it was when the Ravens blew them out earlier in the season. The Bills were missing 3 of their key guys on defense in that first game earlier this year, but it's going to be close. I just think that they're going to whine. They're going to, ground it out. They're going to continue to just beat the Bills' offensive or defensive line and say, hey, good luck stopping Derrick Henry. Because as we know, Mike Tomlin always says he keeps going in that fourth quarter. He can hit those home runs. I think we're going to see that.
I think you see that as well. I think the Bills again, and this is where I think also the argument for Josh Allen rests is, like you said, the MVP argument is like the Ravens have 9 Pro Bowlers. Like they're a more balanced roster. They can do things better on both sides of the ball. Whereas, Josh Allen and the Bills, they're a very good team. They have a lot of things going for them, but I think the Ravens just have more going for them. And part of the more is Lamar as well. Yeah. I got the Ravens winning this one just like you do. So I think we picked the same picks all the way down the board. I don't like that. I need to close the gap. And that means I only have 3 games left after this week. Crap. All right. So because of that, I have to switch one of my games. I can't allow myself to go into next week. Oh, but I don't know who I switch because like if I switch, if I'm wrong, it's over. I can't. Well, I'm down. So wait, I was down 3. I picked up 1 game last week, so I'm down 2. So I could still.
So you have you wiggle room a little bit.
I have 1 wiggle room. Oh man, oh, there's so much pressure. Did y'all tell how stressed I am because I do not want to lose to Jenna. All right. We're gonna go upset special. I'm going the Rams taking out the Eagles. I'm switching my picks here for the show. Rams taking out the Eagles purely because I need to catch Jenna. If I was thinking with the sane mind, I would pick the Eagles. But this is purely about retribution and getting back into it. So it's a one game thing next week, and then we can see about the conference championships and the Super Bowl. But that's what has to happen. Let's go Rams, LA, get it done, Sean McVay.
I like it. That would be the one that I would pick too. That would honestly, if I had to choose a pick, that would be my pick.
There you go. Well, she's Jenna Harner. Jenna, thank you so much for joining us here as always on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let people can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Thank you for having me as always. You can find me on Twitter at Jenna Harner 11, Instagram Jenna_Harner, locally in Pittsburgh, WPXI channel 11, on either on Pittsburgh TV or on our app and streaming services as well.
Absolutely. She's Jenna Harner. Thank you, Jenna, for joining us. And thank you all for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all the social medias at Carter Critiques. Read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com, including my most recent film study on what went wrong with the Steelers' defensive game plan for the playoffs. And you can find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, breaking down your Pittsburgh Steelers on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel to get all those episodes. We're back Monday with more here on your Steelers right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.